So welcome to the GAPS intro, how to get the whole family started with simplicity and a plan. And I say that because the GAPS introduction diet can be a rather complicated, nuanced protocol. And so we're going to kind of break it down into simpler steps and tips and tricks. So I'm Melanie Christner. Mom to 4 hungry eaters. Got one of them over there. Cade, who's 16, Jack, who's 13, Maggie, who's 11, and Charlotte, who's 9. Wife to a great guy of almost 19 years now. I am certified as a nutritional therapy practitioner and a GAPS practitioner with a further certification in restorative wellness practitioner. I've had the privilege of bringing over 200 families through my online GAPS classes, and I get to work one-on-one with families and individuals on GAPS. So here's a little bit about why I do what I do. We did GAPS as a family, and I've seen the benefits of the GAPS protocol, witnessed the power of food in my own family, and in many different ways, I believe food and the way we eat has the potential to make a huge impact in the world. Okay. Having said that, how did I get here? Before we get into the lessons about GAPS, maybe we should just take a second to show a raise of hands who knows what GAPS is. Okay, all right, mostly everybody. Anybody who doesn't have a clue about what it is? Okay, good. I want to share just a little bit about our journey into real food and GAPS. So before we were a family of 6, that's kind of where my story starts. We had 3 beautiful children, Cade, Jack, and Maggie, and I was a happy, stay-at-home mom with these beautiful kids, and life was good. But as you know, there's a kind of a maternal bank of health, and having kids makes draws on those, on that maternal bank of health. So by the time this little surprise came along, I was rather depleted. And that led to kind of a road bump in my health. Chain of events, postpartum infection, antibiotics, and my health kind of took a nosedive. And I was dealing with symptoms like this after the birth of my 4th. So I tried a lot of natural remedies and real food diets, like the anti-candida diet, the Weston A. Price diet. These moved the needle enough to encourage me, but they were not quite what our family needed to fully fix what was going on with us health-wise. So at that point, in the midst of my struggles, I happened to meet Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, this neurologist from the UK, who had this vast amount of medical knowledge paired with this traditional Russian wisdom. And she had created the GAPS, the Gut and Psychology Syndrome Protocol, to heal her own small son of autism at the age of 3, and went on to bring it into her clinic and treat more children with autism, and found that when a whole family went on the protocol, they were able to heal their allergies, their asthma, their migraines, their hormone imbalances. By healing the gut, she was able to heal the whole family, not just the autistic child. So she went on to write the Gut and Psychology Syndrome book, and has been helping thousands of people around the world with her GAPS protocol ever since. So, in a moment of clarity and realizing that life is kind of what you make it, our family set a date to do the GAPS protocol, and we did this, crazy enough, while we were traveling the country in an Airstream. We did GAPS in an RV kitchen. It can be done with our 4 kids. We were traveling around the western half of the US, and the really amazing thing was that this one protocol with multiple different issues in our family, all of them were resolved by doing this at the roots gut healing protocol. And that's the really amazing part. Here's a little picture of 2 happy eaters in the RV. These are our daughters. Let's see, they're eating eggs, carrots, sauerkraut, and some form of homemade mayonnaise, and probably tuna fish or chicken, something like that. The GAPS introduction diet is amazing for picky eaters, which these 2 were before we went on GAPS. So the reality is that if you can have a sense of adventure about your family's health and food, and a little bit of tenacity, it can be really empowering and life-changing. And I love this quote by Dr. Natasha to mothers. If you are a superhero, every woman who takes charge of cooking for her family takes charge of her family's health, and not only the physical. But this is why I set out to do this class or this workshop. It can be so intimidating from a place of not having tried it, not having the cooking skills, there's new foods, what do I do next, what do I do first? And this goes way beyond any short-term diet you've probably tried in the past. So I want you to know that this is completely normal to feel a little bit intimidated, and you're in good company. So as a little bit of encouragement to do this work, this is a class participant that came through my GAPS class. She writes, "I have a much deeper understanding of the primacy of food, its role as both villain when we eat modern processed food, and the hero when we eat real, nutrient-dense healing food of our health. I've learned that my health and how I feel on a day-to-day basis is 100% about what I eat. I honestly, no exaggeration, feel better than I have felt in decades." She goes on to write a few more things, but that's the gist of it. So if you're troubled about any of your family's health issues, what I love about GAPS is that it can help everyone in the family. Are you confused about how to start GAPS? Should I do full GAPS? Should I do, was that a yes in the back? Okay. Should I do intro? How long will it take? Well, we'll get into that today. We'll get into the specifics. So you're in the right place. We're going to talk about good strategies, whether you're a complete newbie or you know quite a bit about GAPS. All right, so what you'll learn. We'll talk about an overview of the different parts of GAPS and how they work. We'll talk about tips for the GAPS intro diet, which is probably the most intimidating. The value of setting a date and working backwards. We're going to talk about 3 different kind of measured approaches to the GAPS intro diet. We're going to talk about how to know when to move on to the next stage of the intro diet, because there's 6 stages of the GAPS introduction diet. And I added in my scripts for talking to kids about GAPS, including my 16-year-old son, Cade's take on it for teenagers. Hippocrates is known for, his saying, all disease begins in the gut. Well, he had a lot more to say, and he talked a lot about food preparation. And the different thing about GAPS is that it's not just about food groups and what's included and what's eliminated. It's really specific to how that food is prepared on the intradiet. Okay. All right, so let's get started with our overview. There's three main parts to the GAPS protocol. It is not just diet. So it's the diet, which is the introduction diet, the full GAPS diet, and then transitioning off. This is not a lifetime diet for most people. It's a healing protocol. It's meant to last usually about 1.5 to 2 years. We're going to focus on the diet part today, and more specifically the introduction diet part of the GAPS protocol. So this is what the protocol does. It treats the root issue, which is the gut. It gently cleans up and removes the flow of toxins both to the brain and to the rest of the body. It removes hard to digest foods, and it corrects nutritional deficiencies by emphasizing healing foods, and thereby it restores your immune system. The diet component is further broken down into the three parts that I talked about just a minute ago. The 6-stage introduction diet, and we'll talk about who should be doing that versus the full GAPS diet, and then transition. Okay, so what's the purpose? The GAPS introduction diet, what it's doing is it's providing building blocks for the little baby cells that are continually birthing and going through their life cycle in the digestive tract. It's gentle and healing because there's really low fiber on this part of the diet. It introduces the most gentle foods first, gradually, step by step. And it also provides beneficial microbes, and it can be used as a holistic approach to diarrhea, which a lot of these really sick kids are dealing with. This is who GAPS Intro is for primarily. So if you're dealing with diarrhea of any origin, abdominal pain, bloating, flatulence, leaky gut and inflammatory bowel conditions, autistic children, and all children on the spectrum or with learning disabilities, like Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, kids and adults diagnosed with diabetes type 1 and celiac disease. We're seeing kids with type 1 diabetes having reversals with protocols like the GAPS diet. Some cases of stubborn constipation, and those with multiple food allergies and intolerances, because in those cases, the gut lining is pretty damaged and it needs this slow, methodical healing. Now, here is a list of what you would want to start with if you want to do full GAPS. Chronic constipation, because taking all of the fiber out of your diet can be difficult if you're already dealing with chronic constipation. If you're breastfeeding or pregnant, you would not want to start with the introduction diet. It's too detoxifying, too strong to be doing when you're pregnant or breastfeeding. If you travel a lot, you might want to consider full GAPS first. And if you don't have a lot of real food experience, I generally recommend to my clients to start with full GAPS. Just to get used to the cooking skills and, what you need to learn. Okay, we could talk about each food that's added in each stage. If you're interested, though, for time's sake, I do have fridge magnets for each stage of the GAPS introduction diet and the full GAPS food list. They're out on my table if you guys are interested. Okay. So your success and what you gain from GAPS depends on your approach. How much you apply yourself, how much you prepare, how much space and practical effort you give to the protocol itself. So I've outlined 3 different approaches for taking to the GAPS intro diet. Number 1 is my 3 to 6 month approach, and this would be good for kind of the family whose standard American diet does not know much about real food yet. They're just learning. This would be the most measured approach. So on the 3 to 6 month approach, you're going to put tasks on your calendar by the week. So take a month to just remove processed foods and learn how to do, real food replacements. And then maybe the next month you're taking out sugar and grains and learning how to have good tasting food minus those food groups. And then here's my approach to full GAPS. So I recommend doing week 1, you're adding in GAPS breakfasts. Week 2, you're adding in GAPS lunches. Maybe week 3, you're adding in snacks. And then by the end of the month, you're adding in all your GAPS dinners. So you're full GAPS by the end of a month. And then to further take the slow, careful approach, do the 6 stages of intro in reverse, actually. So starting with stage 6, then 5, then 4, then 3, and then moving on through the introduction diet as normal. Then there's the 1 month approach. That's best for the family or individual who has a grasp on real food eating. They know a lot of the skills. They still want to take a careful, measured approach. And then this is the way you would take that. So 1 month of trying GAPS foods, and on my website I have a 30-day kind of skill list or checklist, a 30-day prep guide that's available for free. And then again, you would do the first week doing GAPS breakfast perhaps, second week GAPS lunches and breakfast, third week GAPS snacks, lunches and breakfast, and then the fourth week adding in, you're on full GAPS by that point. And then starting the 6 stages of the GAPS introduction diet. In this approach, you're adding, tasks on your calendar, by the day.
Are you starting at stage 6 or stage 1?
Stage 1, yep. And then lastly, the third approach I have is the next week approach. This would be necessary if you have a child with autism who's in distress every day, in pain every day, somebody who's dealing with a lot of digestive discomfort, a lot of severe behavioral issues. Life is not good, and you don't have the luxury of a slow, measured approach. Or if you just like the cold turkey approach, which I don't recommend, but there are those who do. So in this scenario, you want to be clearing your calendar. A long weekend is ideal at minimum. It's best to at least have 5 days off of work or school to start the protocol. And then on my website, there's a 5 days intro checklist and menu to get started. Those first 5 days of the GAPS introduction diet can be the more challenging. And then the Heal Your Gut cookbook is an excellent resource. It's got all 6 stages of the GAPS introduction diet with recipes for each stage and recipes for full GAPS as well. And then don't run out of food. You want to prep at least one day ahead of yourself in this scenario. On the GAPS introduction diet, you can deal with some fatigue and kind of some brain fog, especially if you're taking this approach and you want to have food prepped ahead of yourself. So, Monday morning breakfast, you're thinking about Tuesday morning breakfast and what you're going to be eating and making. Some practical tips. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and probably a lot of you guys here. Food sourcing. Engage with your local farmers. You can do that pretty easily in Vermont, but some people live in food deserts. I do realize that. There are a lot of online resources that you can find. There's an Amish farm. It's called Miller's Organics, and they ship all around the country. Fermented foods, broths, 24-hour yogurt and kefir, things like that. And you can order from them wherever you are. There's localharvest.org, Eat Wild, pickyourown.org, localfarmmarkets.org. These are online websites that you can access to find local sources. So this is a nuance that needs to be in mind while doing GAPS intro. So for 30 days on the GAPS introduction diet, we're not doing bone broth. It can be high in histamines and glutamine, and when there's a leaky gut situation, there's probably a leaky blood-brain barrier, and the glutamine and histamines can be too strong for that healing barrier. So we do 30 days of meat stock, and basically you're taking for instance, you're taking a whole chicken, putting it into a pot of water with your vegetables, and you're cooking it for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that water is now your meat stock. And that's what you're consuming on the GAPS introduction diet. So.
Is that nuance in the book?
It is not. It's probably a recommendation of Dr. Natasha's in the last, she mentions meat stock, but now it's a more specific, like the first 30 days of intro, not doing bone broth. If you want to speed up your healing, these are the foods you want to be having almost every day. Bone marrow, gelatinous soft tissues around the bones, the skin, etc. Animal fats, organ meats. The way we did this as a family on intro was I would cook a whole chicken, and then I'd gather the soft tissues, the connective tissues, the skin, the fat, and I would blend it in our Vitamix with some salt and pepper. And it made a creamy pate that I could then add to our soups in place of cream, or great flavor. It's so nourishing too. What's that? The meat, yes. Yes, we're using the meat, but I would just add that creamy pate to our soups and stocks. Some time savers, because I have a lot of people asking me, how can I not be in the kitchen all day long? Make 2 meals from every 1 meal that you're making. A lot of times when we were on intro, I would make a huge pot of soup in the morning, and we'd reheat it throughout the day, and that was the basis of most of our meals on intro, and we'd add other things alongside of it. but that made cooking a lot simpler for a family of 6. Plan 24 hours in advance, like today's breakfast, we're thinking about tomorrow's breakfast. A huge time saver is to chop like a week's worth of vegetables and freeze them. And most of the GAPS foods can be stored really well. So you can stock up on ghee, meats and bones, 24-hour yogurt and kefir, your sauerkraut. Those all keep really well. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a quick drink. So these are the basic foods to have on hand for the GAPS intro diet. Variety of meat, meaty bones and fish, fats like tallow, lard, ghee, duck fat, 24-hour yogurt and kefir. That's important. Kefir, it's a cultured dairy beverage. When you culture your yogurt or your kefir for 24 hours, you're fermenting the lactose out of it. So that's really key on the GAPS intro diet. It's got to be homemade. There's one commercial brand, it's called White Mountain, that is 24-hour fermented, but that's pretty much the only one available commercially. 24 hours plus, a minimum of 24 hours, yep.
Could you get the store-bought and leave it out for 24 hours?
I don't recommend store-bought because it's not made with the real kefir grains that are, as hardy and strong, yeah. Perhaps, yep, perhaps. I would check with the manufacturer. Okay. Prepared meat stock, sauerkraut, vegetables, eggs, and virgin olive oil.
Is this list online or in the book?
Specifically laid out like this? No, but these foods, yes, are in the GAPS book, and you can find them online. This particular webinar workshop will be available on my website online as well for free. So I have a card on my table where you can access that. Yep. Basic supplements. The first 2 are not technically supplements, but they are really helpful digestively, so I included them. Lemon water in the morning, ginger tea for settling tummies, a probiotic, a good quality probiotic like BioCult or Gut Pro. I have more good probiotics listed in my Mother's Guide to Probiotics out on the table. Cod liver oil, I would get the most unprocessed and high quality you can get. HCl, which is hydrochloric acid, that's our natural stomach acid that our stomach cells are producing when we are eating our food. They're meant to digest our proteins, chelate our minerals, be our first line of defense in sanitizing our food. A lot of people are lacking in this. You can also take digestive bitters to help that as well.
How do you know how much HCl and what's quality?
Well, come to me afterwards. You can self-dose pretty easily. I like to use small dose hydrochloric acid to do that, like Biotics Hydrozyme. But that's pretty easy to self-dose and figure out what you need to be taking. And your body should self-wean itself as well. It's not meant to be like something you need forever. Magnesium glycinate, and then essential fatty acid supplements like fish oil, borage, blackcurrant seed oil, etc. But in general, we're going to take a break from all supplements on intro, and then we'll add back in what we need. Stage 3, we're adding in the probiotics and cod liver oil. Stage 4, the other essential fatty acid supplements. There are a couple exceptions. If you're on prescription drugs, those need to be weaned off under a practitioner's care. And then if you need digestive help during intro, I would also make exceptions for like hydrochloric acid or bitters, things like that. So here's the basic equipment that you need. Most people have this in their kitchen already. This is the budget list. So stock pot and good pan. I recommend cast iron and stainless steel. There's many other good cookware out there. Good knives and cutting boards. An inexpensive juicer. Like you can pick up a Jack LaLanne juicer on Craigslist used for less than $50 usually. Stick blender, like a Cuisinart Smart Stick, and then mason jars of lots of different sizes. But if you have the budget for it and want to have more fun in your kitchen, this is kind of my list for that. I personally prefer the Omega 8006 juicer. It's just our family favorite. It's good quality. Then there's Vitamix or Blendtec blender, something strong enough to do like nut butters and make your nut butter pancakes and stuff like that. A dehydrator like Excalibur can make your life really easy as far as making yogurt and snack foods like dehydrated fruits and vegetables and fruit roll-ups and stuff like that. KitchenAid stand mixers, great. Instant Pot, food processor. And then if you're dealing with histamine issues or are extra sensitive, then the airlock fermenting vessels that do an anaerobic fermentation can give you a cleaner ferment, and if you ferment it long enough, it's going to have less histamines. There are two common issues that come up in intro, constipation and diarrhea, one or the other. So here are quick tips for constipation. Add in fresh pressed carrot juice sooner. We're doing that in stage 2 rather than stage 4. And you take that with cod liver oil. I also have a whole menu of constipation remedies in my GAPS class to choose from. So, and then diarrhea we would handle by staying put on the current stage. If it's profuse and watery, you're going to want to eliminate veggies until it resolves. And also the probiotic BioCult has the specific strains that are well tested for diarrhea. Do you remember when I talked about when our family set a date? When you set a date on the calendar, things kind of magically get done. And that's what I found with many things in our lives. Scheduling it propels me forward, and things get done and just work backwards from that date.
What was that sit down for 30 minutes?
Work backwards, sit down for 30 minutes, list your supplies. You could work with the 5-day checklist and menu and, just write out your menu, your grocery list. It really takes 15 to 30 minutes a week to plan out. All right, how to move through the intro stages. So stage 1, unless you're dealing with diarrhea or severe abdominal pain, this is 1 to 2 days that we're generally staying on this stage. The next stages 2 to 4, we're moving through by adding one new food at a time. Now, if you have more of the severe issues like that would warrant the next week approach, then you're going to want to add in one new food every 3 days and take a slower approach to stages 2 to 4. Stage 5, we're adding raw vegetables. Now, that could be kind of overwhelming because there's endless amounts of vegetables available. So what I recommend is taking what's seasonal and local to you and making that your kind of short list of vegetables that you're going to work through one at a time. And the same with stage 6, where you're adding in fruits.
And what are you looking for before you transition to the next step? Like no diarrhea, no
Right.
digestive reaction?
Yep. And if you are, worried about a particular food, you can then do the skin sensitivity test. Like say you're concerned about egg yolk. You can take a drop of egg yolk at bedtime, put it on the inside of your wrist, and then you're going to go to bed and check your wrist in the morning. If it's red or rashy, then that would be a signal to not introduce that food yet. Now, that's not absolutely perfect skin sensitive or food sensitivity testing, but that's what you can do cheap and free at home. Okay. So here's a little flow chart of how to move through the stages. Again, we covered this a little bit, but intro stage 1, diarrhea, yes, stay put. Consider the no veggies and the biocult. If not, move to stage 2. Same thing with the skin sensitivity test. If you're sensitive, skip to the next food and keep increasing what are tolerated foods for you. Okay, this is kind of, I'm going to go through this slowly because I've written out a script for young kids. And I've got 2 slides worth for this. And then I'll follow up with my 16-year-old son, Cade's take on it for teenagers. So your body has lots of little helpers, tiny bugs inside. This is talking to young kids about GAPS and explaining what's going on in their bodies. But your body can also get too many unhelpful bugs, or insert whatever word works for your kid. These unhelpful bugs don't help us to be strong and healthy, so we need to tell them to move out and let the good bugs thrive. And we do this by taking away the unhelpful bugs' favorite foods, like sugar and junk food. And for a while, we eat only food that feeds the good bugs and makes them stronger so that they can do their jobs. This diet can also help us by repairing our tummies, building our muscles and bones, and helping our brains work better. It helps all the parts of us. But for a little while the unhelpful bugs are dying off, we can feel pretty yucky. And we might miss the foods that made the unhelpful bugs happy. We can't avoid that part, but I will help you as much as I can while they move out. We'll take special baths, we'll get fresh air and sunshine, watch some movies and read books, or you insert whatever favorite activities for your kids. The point is to reward with experiences rather than food. And I also find it helpful to show them the food list and the stages and what they can eat on each stage, so that you kind of make the list the heavy rather than you, and they get excited about what they're going to get to eat next. Stage 2, we get to eat Russian custards, or. So here's my son's perspective. It sucks sometimes. Your friends will make fun of you. It's not a miracle that's going to fix you tomorrow. But if you ever want to feel good, if there was ever something that could benefit you more than exercise, more than just eating a few more vegetables a day, or avoiding that tasty box of cereal manufactured in some lab, it's hard, but if you really want my opinion, it's worth it. And anecdotally, I will say that if you have an athletic teenager or young kids, I would say the GAPS protocol is amazing for helping them to stay really healthy, helping their bones to be strong and less breakable and less prone to injury. It just really promotes strength and robust vitality for kids. So when I was going through the protocol with my family the first time, I would have felt like I died and gone to heaven if there was like a GAPS class or something that I could be a part of to learn in a sequential, step-by-step way. So if you are interested in getting more help, I do have an online GAPS class. The next one is starting June 20th, and I've brought over 200 families through it. Just to tell you just a little bit about it before there's Q&A. Here's what some previous class members have had to say. I'll just whiz through this a bit. I will talk about what's covered in the specific modules. Oops, sorry. So Module 1, we cover kind of the organization of both the class and the organization and structure of the gut and how it all works. In Module 2, we're talking about the gut and brain connection and how the gut is affecting the brain, what kind of common issues are being dealt with. In Module 3, we're talking about the gut and body connection, how the state of the gut health affects the rest of the body, and talking about specific conditions like asthma and chronic cystitis, allergies, things like that. Okay. Oops, sorry. Wrong one. In Module 4, we're talking about the full nutritional protocol, and we've got an extra bonus workbook on anaerobic fermentation. There are cooking videos for each food that is a major focus in GAPS. Okay, sorry. In Module 5, we're talking about full GAPS. We have recipes and menus for GAPS breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinners, food lists, how to eat with other people, traveling, things like that, all the practical day-to-day issues that you deal with. Module 6, we're dealing with the stages of GAPS and with menus and recipes for each stage of the intradiet. GAPS Module 7, we're dealing with supplementation, the basic supplements on GAPS, and then also complementary supplements like homeopathy and digestive supplements, and that's covered in Module 7. Module 8, detox, resources and how-tos of the gentle detoxification that's part of the GAPS protocol. And then Module 9 talks about practical matters like budgeting, remedies for different issues that come up, common children ailments, things like that. And then Module 10 covers GAPS pregnancy and new baby, and how to eat if you are pregnant or nursing while on GAPS, common remedies for that. And it also talks about postpartum depression and how to remedy that naturally. And then we have some bonus modules on cholesterol and heart diet issues. Some more. And then again, cooking videos are included. Talk about all the major foods of GAPS. And one of the best parts of the class is probably the forum, where we're in the forum 4 hours a week talking and answering your questions about GAPS. So you can ask questions any time of the day, and we have set office hours every week where we're answering questions. Okay. So there's the link to sign up if you are interested, and I also have some information on my table. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
You said if we were concerned about allergies to do the skin test. Now, we've had IgG allergy testing done.
Okay.
Do those type of allergies show up in the skin test, or is it more for the histamine reactions?
They might show up if you. What kind of allergies are we talking about? Like what specific foods? Eggs? Okay. So, sorry. She was asking, if they've done allergy testing and specific foods have shown up, would the skin sensitivity test also show those foods? So I think what Dr. Natasha would say is to try it in a very small amount. Do the skin sensitivity test, because intro can reverse those allergies pretty quickly. It's possible. Some it takes longer, some it's quicker. Yeah. Any other questions? No other questions? All right, we'll close it up. I think the next speaker is ready to come in. Thank you, guys.